Élisabeth of France, the forgotten princess of the Revolution. Meet Élisabeth of France. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're stepping into another incredible story from history, one that doesn't get nearly enough attention. It's about Élisabeth of France, the younger sister of King Louis XVI, a princess who stood by her family through the chaos of the French Revolution. You've probably heard of her glamorous sister-in-law, Marie Antoinette. But Élisabeth, she's the unsung hero, or maybe the unsung martyr, of this royal saga. She never wore a crown, never married, but her courage and faith made her unforgettable. Élisabeth of France lived a life defined by loyalty, devotion, and a tragic fate that mirrors the downfall of the French monarchy. So, who was this princess who chose God and family over everything else? Was she just a footnote in the revolution, or does her story deserve a bigger spotlight? Let's dive in and find out. A princess born in Versailles. Élisabeth Philippine. Marie-Hélène de France was born on May 3rd, 1764, at the Palace of Versailles, the glittering heart of the French monarchy. She was the youngest of 8 children born to Louis, Dauphin of France, and Maria Josepha of Saxony. Sadly, she never really knew her parents. Her father died of tuberculosis the year after her birth, and her mother passed away when Élisabeth was just 3. Orphaned so young, she was raised by governesses and grew up in the shadow of her older siblings, including her brother Louis, who'd later become King Louis XVI. Being a Bourbon princess came with all the perks you'd expect: luxurious dresses, endless banquets, and a life surrounded by gold and marble. But Élisabeth wasn't your typical royal. From a young age, she showed a quiet strength and a deep connection to her Catholic faith. While other princesses were groomed for grand marriages to secure alliances, Élisabeth seemed different. She loved painting, music, and horseback riding. But she also spent hours in prayer and charity work. Some called her shy. Others saw her as fiercely independent. By the time Louis XVI took the throne in 1774, Élisabeth was 10 years old, living at Versailles with her family. She idolized her big brother and grew close to his wife, Marie Antoinette, despite their very different personalities. Where Marie was flashy and sociable, Élisabeth was reserved and spiritual. Yet the two women bonded, and Élisabeth became a steady presence in their lives, a role that would define her as the revolution loomed. The choice to stay single. Here's where Élisabeth's story takes an unusual turn. Unlike most royal women of her time, she never married. Back then, princesses were bargaining chips in the game of European politics, shipped off to marry foreign princes to seal treaties or strengthen dynasties. Élisabeth could have had her pick of suitors. She was beautiful, well-educated, and from one of the most powerful families in Europe. So why didn't she? Some say it was her faith. Élisabeth was deeply religious, even by 18th century standards. She once wrote that she wanted to dedicate her life to God, and marriage might have felt like a distraction from that calling. Others think it was her loyalty to Louis XVI. After losing her parents, he was her rock, and she didn't want to leave him or France for some distant court. There were rumors of potential matches, a Spanish prince here, a Portuguese duke there, but nothing ever came of them. Louis XVI, who adored his little sister, never forced her into anything. So she stayed at Versailles, unmarried, living a life of duty and devotion. This choice made her stand out. While Marie Antoinette dazzled the court with her fashion and parties, Élisabeth kept a lower profile. She wasn't into the gossip or the extravagance. She preferred quiet moments with her family or helping the poor. But don't mistake her modesty for weakness. Élisabeth had a backbone of steel, and that strength would soon be tested in ways she could never have imagined. The storm of the Revolution. Fast forward to 1789. The French Revolution explodes onto the scene. The people are fed up with hunger, taxes, and a monarchy that seems oblivious to their suffering. On July 14th, the Bastille falls, and everything changes. For Élisabeth, now 25, this isn't just a political crisis. It's personal. Her brother, Louis XVI, is king, and her family is suddenly public enemy number one. While some royals fled France as the chaos grew, Élisabeth stayed put. She could have escaped to Austria with Marie Antoinette's relatives or found safety elsewhere, but she refused to abandon Louis and his family. In October 1789, when an angry mob of women stormed Versailles demanding bread, Élisabeth was there as the royal family was forced to leave their palace and move to Paris under guard. She didn't flinch. Instead, she stood by her brother and sister-in-law, ready to face whatever came next. By 1792, the monarchy was on its last legs. The royal family was imprisoned in the Temple, a gloomy fortress in Paris, after revolutionaries stormed the Tuileries Palace. Élisabeth went with them, sharing their confinement. Life in the Temple was brutal, cramped, cold, and humiliating. Yet Élisabeth became a rock for the family. She helped care for Louis and Marie Antoinette's children, especially young Louis Charles, the Dauphin, and Marie-Thérèse, the only one who'd survived the ordeal. She taught them, prayed with them, and tried to shield them from the nightmare unfolding outside. Her faith kept her going. Élisabeth spent hours reading the Bible and praying, even as guards mocked her. She believed God had a plan, even if it was hard to see in that dark cell. To her, loyalty to her family and her beliefs was worth any price, and that price was about to get steep. The fall of the royal family. The revolution didn't spare anyone with royal blood. On January 21st, 1793, Louis XVI was executed by guillotine, leaving Élisabeth devastated but resolute. 9 months later, on October 16th, Marie Antoinette followed him to the scaffold. Élisabeth was now alone with the children, her world shrinking to the walls of the temple. She could have begged for mercy or tried to distance herself from the monarchy to save her skin, but that wasn't her style. Élisabeth saw herself as part of her brother's legacy, and she wouldn't betray it. The revolutionaries, though, had no use for sentiment. To them, she was just another Bourbon, a relic of the old regime that needed to be erased. In May 1794, Élisabeth was transferred from the Temple to the Conciergerie, a grim prison known as the Antechamber of Death. She knew what was coming. Separated from her niece, Marie-Thérèse, she faced her final days with nothing but her faith to lean on. Her health was failing. Years of stress and confinement had taken their toll. But her spirit, unbroken. Trial and execution. On May 9th, 1794, Élisabeth was hauled before the Revolutionary Tribunal. The charges? Conspiring against the Republic and aiding the enemies of the Revolution. The evidence was laughably thin, mostly rumours and guilt by association with Louis XVI. One accuser even claimed she'd helped royalists escape, which was nonsense. She'd been locked up for years. The trial was a formality. The verdict was decided before she even stepped into the room. Élisabeth didn't grovel or plead. When asked about her role in the monarchy, she simply said she'd done her duty as a sister and a Christian. Her calm defiance rattled the court, but it didn't change her fate. On May 10th, 1794, at age 30, she was sentenced to death. That afternoon, she was taken to the Place de la Révolution, now Place de la Concorde, in a cart with 23 other prisoners. Dressed in a simple white gown, her hair cropped short, she radiated peace. Witnesses say she comforted the others as they faced the guillotine. Some even called her a saint in those final moments. When her turn came, she climbed the scaffold without hesitation. The blade fell, and Élisabeth of France was gone just 2 weeks after her 30th birthday. Elizabeth's legacy. Elizabeth's death wasn't front-page news like Marie Antoinette's. She didn't have the fame or the infamy to make her a household name, but her story stuck with those who knew her. The Catholic Church later considered her for sainthood. She's officially a servant of God because of her unshakable faith and sacrifice. Survivors from that day at the guillotine claimed a sweet smell, like flowers, filled the air after her execution, sparking legends of her holiness. In history, though, she's often overshadowed. Marie Antoinette gets the movies, the books, the spotlight, while Elizabeth fades into the background. Maybe it's because she didn't leave behind scandals or quotable lines. Or maybe it's because her story is quieter, less about glamour, more about grit. But that's what makes her so compelling. Elizabeth wasn't a queen or a rebel. She was a woman who chose loyalty over safety, faith over fear. In a world falling apart, she held her ground, even when it cost her everything. Why Elizabeth matters. Elizabeth of France reminds us that history isn't just about the big names or the loud moments. It's also about the people who stand firm in the shadows, who face the storm without flinching. She wasn't perfect. No one is. But her courage and compassion shine through the centuries. What do you think of Elizabeth? Does she deserve more recognition? Or is her quiet legacy part of her charm? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this dive into her life, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the past. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more stories about fascinating figures in history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any future content. Feel free to leave a comment below. What do you think of Elizabeth's story? Are there other historical figures you'd like us to cover? See you next time on